Welcome back to another episode of the In Pursuit podcast. Today I'm with Erin. Erin, so nice to have you on.
Thank you.
You're just back from you're back from Bali with a couple of weeks?
About 2.5 weeks, I think, at this point.
Only 2.5 weeks? It seems like you've been back so much longer. So let's talk about it. What was that like?
It was honestly the best thing I could have ever done for myself. Before I left, I was kind of in a bit of a rut. Well, to be honest, I've been in a bit of a rut for most of my adult life, but...
When you say rut now, like, what do you mean by rut?
Just stuck very mentally, not able to kind of find myself or happiness or any sort of satisfaction in my life. I was very much ruled by anxiety and things like that. So I think just this trip, like I went over completely by myself as well for the 5 weeks. So
you knew nobody over there, like?
No, absolutely nobody. But I needed to do that for myself, just completely throw myself in at the deep end, step away from all my comforts, everything that was very familiar to me, and just try and sit with myself for a couple of weeks. And that's something that I was always very, very scared to do. I think a lot of people could relate to that, like especially when we try to sit and meditate for a while, all these thoughts, insecurities, things kind of come in and they can get very, very overwhelming. So I felt like I needed to just put myself into a situation where I couldn't run away from any of that. And
so you felt before that you were like running away from all these things as well?
Always, yeah. I was always, trying not to feel everything all at the same time. I was constantly in a state of overwhelm, always worrying about things. And one of the other things that I loved about going away to Bali was that while I was there, I didn't have any of the responsibilities that I have here. You know, like looking after my friends, my family, you know, the obligations of seeing people doing things, work, you know, all of that kind of stuff. That was very much removed when I completely changed my environment. So I didn't have any of those triggers. So it allowed me time to actually just sit with myself and just be by myself and, to sound all hippy-dippy, find myself.
You were sad, yeah. So you went over there. How long were you over there for?
I was there for 5 weeks.
Was it 5 weeks?
It was 5 weeks, but 3 of those weeks were the yoga teaching course.
Yeah. Okay, so you went over there. So let's talk about it. What was it about?
So I went over for the purpose of doing the yoga teacher course because I got my personal trainer's diploma last year, and I've practiced a lot of yoga over the last few years, but I really wanted to understand it a lot more. And even my uncle, he would do yoga like every single day, and he was very spiritual. So he always used to talk about the benefits of breath work, of these movements and things like that. And I felt a little bit of it, but I didn't feel like I fully understood it. And I wanted to start kind of bringing that into my sessions with my clients and things like that. But I felt like I needed a bit of proper training. And there were 2 girls, local girls in Kinsale that had done the same course.
Well, they went over to Bali and did it?
They went over to Bali and did it. And I just saw the change in them. I just saw how, you know, for me, they were always beautiful and glowing beforehand. But afterwards, there was just this sense of calm and self-love and acceptance that I really, really wanted for myself. So I kind of thought, okay, do you know what? I need a holiday. I need to kind of get out of my comfort zone. Why not actually go to Bali? Because my personal trainer's course was all online. And that was great. That was wonderful. But I felt like I needed something a little bit more intense.
Yes, I get you.
And I needed that immersive experience. And I wanted to go to Bali.
Yeah. Who doesn't want to go to Bali? Exactly. It's like a win-win, like 2 birds, 1 stone.
So, so I felt like it would really, really suit me. It was very affordable for me. So, I just packed my bags, booked it, and just went. And
I seen your Instagram. I was like, wait, she's gone to Bali. What?
Yeah, it was.
I was like, is she gone for good? Is she? What's it?
Oh, very nearly didn't come back because, Well, I suppose a lot of people kind of before I left were saying, oh, you're not going to come back. And my response...
Everyone says that though when people head off traveling. Like,
but my response was, I'm not coming back, but I am coming back. Like I knew that something like this was going to change me. I knew that it was going to alter my...
So the you that went out is not the you that was coming back, is what you're saying?
Absolutely not. Like even when I came home and I walked around my room and was like, oh my God, this is not me. This doesn't suit me. Like even in my bedroom, I would have had like my walls were like 4 different colors. I have like tie-dye everything, rainbow, all this. It's like a unicorn just threw up everywhere. So while I kind of needed that beforehand, I felt like, okay, I'm actually in a much calmer place, so I need a little bit more zen and stuff. So now all my walls are white. And
So when you came back, you made all those changes?
yeah, I just found it was a lot more overstimulating and things like that. So I've noticed a huge change in myself, and even the people that I hang out with all the time, like in work and things, people have kind of looked at me and gone, "You're so light and you're so calm," and I think that's mainly because of the things that I dealt with over there. It allowed me to actually dig so deep into my past traumas, my insecurities, all of the things that were weighing me down day to day.
Like what were those things that were weighing you down?
So, I mean, I've really struggled mentally for most of my life, to be honest. Not that I was brought up in any traumatic way or anything, but it all kind of started when I was quite young. I had very severe anorexia when I was 13.
What age was that? Oh, 13, okay.
13, yeah. And like throughout school, there was all various different things. I never felt like I fit in. So I was very, very anxious. I was bullied quite a lot. So yeah, I had the anorexia, which turned into bulimia, self-harm and things like that. And because of all of
this was all around like bulimia, self-harm, it was all around when you were 13, that age?
Well, 13, 14, 15, 16.
So these things developed as you kind of got old from 13.
Exactly, yeah. And it just, I kind of thought that I was coping throughout it all, but now, and I was very angry with myself. Okay. I always felt like I had something to make up for, because even like in my family and my friend groups, I've always been the anxious one. You know, the one that's fragile, the one that's easily broken, the one that falls apart very easily, that's very easily triggered and things like that. So I even put that label on myself, and it's something that I felt extremely guilty for all the time. I felt like a burden in everybody's life, because I'm like, oh, all my friends, my family, they have to deal with this. They have to deal with the fact that I'm so anxious. They have to deal with the fact that I can't just be calm and collected. I always felt very guilty for when I had to cancel on people, because my anxiety would just take over. You know, I'd have this like internal battle of just knowing that I was burnt out and tired, and I didn't have the emotional or physical energy to actually go and do something. But this thing in the back of my head of, oh, I'm letting them down. I'm letting these people down. So I always felt like I had something to make up for, that I had to be a nicer person. I had to be giving more. I had to do more for people. I had to excel in school to make my parents make up for the fact that my parents had to raise such a burden, basically. And I didn't realize how much that had continuously gone on into my 20s and stuff. But that's something that I've very much dealt with. So it was even that just insecurity of kind of realizing that, oh, actually, I've nothing to apologize for, that I even need to be a lot more gentle with myself, because the only reason I was ill, the only reason I had these coping mechanisms was to try and cope, was because my environments, my situations, my lack of self-love were making me not be able to deal with the day-to-day, not be able to manage with the overstimulation every single day. Yeah. And so it all just kind of fed into each other. One of the biggest things, the biggest lessons that I learned over in Bali is that I am lovable. And that's not something that I ever truly believed.
Really, yeah.
During my 20s, I like myself. It's not that I've never liked who I am as a person. In fact, I actually think I'm a pretty fun person. I'm always thinking about, how can I make this day happier? You know, not forcing the happiness, but
for yourself or for other people?
For myself and for other people. Now it's more for myself, but before I was very much like, if I can make these people happy, if I can make them okay, then I will be okay.
Okay, so it's always everyone above you, like.
Very much so, very much a people pleaser. Like even with my mom and dad, you know, I'd be constantly going, okay, can I keep the house clean for my mom? how can I make my dad feel better about work or, you know, things like that, instead of actually just focusing on myself and realizing that if I'm okay, then the situation around me is going to be okay, not the other way around. Absolutely, yeah. Even there was a moment in the third week in the yoga course where we did a sharing circle, and there were all these cards, and basically when it was your turn, you got up, you picked up a card, and then you read it out to the group, and then you shared what emotions it brought up for you. And so I was all excited. I was very, you know, I love these kind of things.
Yeah.
And I picked up a card and I looked at it and I immediately just broke down. I immediately just started bawling my eyes out hysterically, because it's just said on the front of it, I am lovable. And it just, I think in that moment, it really, really, really hit me of how little I believed that throughout my life, and how much that fed into every single daily activity that I did. Because if you don't believe you're lovable, then you're going to constantly be making up for something.
Yes, yeah.
You're going to constantly be trying to
do something to prove you are lovable.
Exactly. Make yourself worthy. Whereas, you know, doing all of that work, you know, releasing so much trauma, forgiving myself and being gentle with myself made me kind of go, oh, hang on. I'm actually a really cool person. I actually love who I am, and I wouldn't want to change myself. And then that brings in a whole different mindset. So in the mornings now, when I wake up, instead of thinking about everything and everyone else but myself, I actually think, okay, how do I feel today? What do I want to do? And that's allowed me to just be able to say, no, I don't want to do that, without feeling guilty. That, you know,
or giving a reason as to why you don't want to.
Yeah, that instead of
justifying.
That instead of thinking like, oh, I'm going to let this person down, instead I think, well, I don't want to let myself down. That, you know, I have to look after myself, you know, and do what makes me happy. And those around me, those who love me for me, they're going to appreciate that. And they'll probably much prefer my company when I'm calm and collected. And not that I think, you know, I have a calm nervous system, but I'm still very hyperactive, excited.
That's just who you are, isn't it? At the core, like, you're just super and genuine. Like.
Exactly. Like, I have a lot of energy, and that's another thing. I've always felt like I was too much for people.
Really, yeah?
Very much. That I'm too excitable. I'm too...
When did you start to think that?
When I was probably about 13, that's kind of generally when a lot of the issues started. And I think that's basically when I went into secondary school. And then it was like comparing, and the cliques started happening. And that's when I suppose a lot more of the bullying and things like that happened. So I started comparing myself to a lot of other people. And even just, I know that a lot of women, especially in my generation, will very much relate to this. But like, there was just so much pressure on being perfect, being skinny, being beautiful, having it all together. And that if you didn't have it together, you weren't worthy. That boys weren't going to like you, that, you know, nobody around you was going to like you type thing. Like even I remember I was put on the Special K diet when I was 11. And that's basically...
What's the Special K diet?
Do you know the Special K cereal?
Yeah.
You eat a bowl for breakfast and you eat a bowl for lunch and you don't eat anything else until dinner time. I was 11. Like, I know that was also my choice to do.
Who gave you this Special K diet? I've never heard of it before.
This was just advertised. Like, I was a little bit chubbier when I was like 11, 12, but now that I've actually studied hormones and I understand how the body works and things, I also know that was actually because that's when I hit puberty. And I have PCOS, so polycystic ovarian syndrome, which means that my hormones are pretty much out of whack. But that can lead to weight gain if you're not eating right, if you're not looking after yourself, and especially if you're stressed. So that's kind of when a lot of stress was happening for me. And especially when I look back on my life, I've realized that times where I thought I was okay, I really wasn't. That I was constantly stressed, constantly like...
So like you're putting out this persona that you were fine, but inside you were just...
Inside I was holding on for dear life. And it's crazy that it's taken me nearly 30 years to actually realize that. But everybody figures these things out at different points. And I'm just happy that I've figured that out now. and that I understand my body so much more, and which allows me to be a lot more forgiving. So yeah, I think that's something that I've been learning for the last like 2 years especially. But it was just, this trip was just such a kick in the face in the best way possible, just to really show me. And I mean, the women that I was surrounded with, because our group was about 30 women, and it's for men and women, but it just so happened to be all women in this group. I've never been surrounded by such a wholesome and forgiving group of women. Like, we were all there to heal. Even in the first sharing circle, when we were all asked, like, why are you here? Of course, we were all there to learn how to teach yoga or how to,
there was something more, like.
Yeah, but there was so much more. And there was every single one you could relate to in some way, shape or form, through stress, relationships, work. I mean, I think pretty much everyone there had experienced.
What was the age group there? Was it like of those 30 women?
From like 18 to like 40 something.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, it was really, really, really mixed. But one thing we all had in common was that we needed to heal. So that there was just no judgment in any way, shape or form. The openness and the vulnerability was insane. The amount that I cried was actually ridiculous. Like, there were tears nearly every single day. Both good and sad, but it was just such a release. Even in the first week, I had a really horrible nightmare. But I woke up laughing about it because it was just so ridiculous. But I had this nightmare that everyone in the group hated me.
Oh yeah.
That nobody liked me at all, and so there was one girl in particular who is just the sweetest soul you will ever come across, like so supportive, the least judgmental person I've ever met in my life. She doesn't even swear. But in my dream, she was like, you are a bitch and a narcissist, and nobody likes you. And everyone was like, yeah, we agree. And I woke up, like, our alarm went off at 5:30 every morning. I woke up and I just started laughing because I realized how ridiculous that entire dream was. That I am likable and that none of these girls would ever say something like that to me. And yeah, I think it was just that my mind could not quite believe that I was in such a wholesome and nourishing environment.
Your mind.
So it was trying to process that and almost come up with something, because our minds are constantly looking for everything that could go wrong. So
it wants comfort and safety, isn't it?
And I suppose for a long time, comfort and safety for me was hardship.
Yeah. Even if because it's familiar, isn't it?
Exactly.
Those things were familiar for you.
Stress was familiar. That's where I felt the most comfortable, even though it was not comfortable, if you know what I mean.
Yes, 100%.
So even that kind of sunk in quite a lot. Like the next when I woke up and I just started laughing and I shared it with one of the girls, and they laughed as well. They just thought it was so funny. And it is, and that kind of really hit home of like, oh, okay, I am likable, and then that progressed to I am lovable. And even when I shared that card of I am lovable, the amount of support that I got from everyone, I mean, they were all like, of course you are, Erin. Like, how could you think you're not? It's just, yeah, it was incredible. And I mean, we did a lot of sound healing. We did a lot of breath work and stuff like that. And of course, that's very, very therapeutic. And there's a lot of science now to back up all of this breath work, and especially the sound healing, that certain vibrations and frequencies and things like that, combined with certain states of meditation, can really cause a release of tension. Because something that a lot of people don't realize is that we store trauma very physically. So that's why, very stressed people, they've got hunched shoulders, or their hips are sore, or they've got bad knees, things like that. That it's not all just because you're sitting down every day or because you don't exercise or whatever. It's actually because if we do not process emotions, if we just keep shoving it down and not actually expressing and releasing it, it will just be stored somewhere in our body, generally our shoulders and our hips, and hips especially for women, which then also leads to a lot of hormone imbalances. So yeah, one of the biggest causes for hormone imbalances is stress. So yeah, there was a lot of releasing and things, and even in the sound healing and stuff, like my whole body would be shaking, And that's just because of the amount the amount of tension I had stored in my body from the years just being released, and it was exhausting. It was so exhausting. Like even in the second week at one point, I was so burnt out. I had a horrible migraine, and I knew my nervous system was like completely on edge because I was pushing myself so much. But I needed that. I needed that so badly. And then afterwards, it's almost as if, like, this, the only way I can visually describe this is as if my heart was just encased in years and years and years of a hard shell from trauma and pain, heartbreak, grief, everything. And just slowly all of these little things, not that they were that little, but, these breathwork sessions, the environment I was in, the learning how to love myself from the inside out, it just kept chipping away at all of these encasings, and it just exploded open, and my heart just feels so raw and so much stronger. Like I feel like I'm walking around with my chest, completely cracked open. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And even just in my day-to-day now, like if I make a mistake or if I do something, I'm no longer, I don't have this loud voice in my head saying, oh, well, you're an idiot. How could you do something so stupid? Like, I can't believe you're actually this thick. Like,
and that was there all the time previous to the trip?
Screaming.
Pardon? Like previous to the trip, that was always there, that kind of voice. Like
screaming in my head. And even like, if I, beforehand, if we had sat here, I would have been in the back of my head going, oh, he probably thinks you're a nut job. Like, what does he actually like you? Like, people watching this and listening to this, are they going to think you're a lunatic? Whereas now I'm kind of like, well, some people are going to like me. They're not, some people aren't. The main thing is that's what I do. I really like who I am now. But it took a lot of hard work. And I was kind of getting to that point before I went on this trip, but this trip just completely shattered. And I mean, that's not to say that I don't still have insecurities.
Yeah.
I mean,
they weren't just all just wiped out, like gone.
No, like, 3-5 weeks of work is not enough. I think you can.
But it's a massive stepping stone for you, isn't it?
Huge. Like, it puts me into a whole different mindset, and I can feel it that I'm only going to keep progressing and getting better.
It's almost like opened your eyes to like what paths you can go down in this.
Yeah, very much.
You're kind of so stuck here, but it opened your perspective to.
Yeah, I was in this little box, and until I kind of broke open from that box, I wasn't really going to go very far, Whereas now I'm like, okay, I've got endless opportunities in front of me. And even the way that I think now when things go wrong, instead of going, oh, why do bad things happen to good people? And why do I have to suffer? Why must I go through all of this? Instead, I go, okay, well, what is this trying to teach me? What in my life am I not doing right? What can I fix? How can I adjust my path? Like, if a relationship doesn't work out, I think, okay, well, maybe that relationship no longer serves me. And I'm just grateful for what I got out of it. You know what I mean? If I break something, I'm like, okay, well, I really enjoyed having it while I did. Maybe it no longer serves me, that sort of thing. So it's a very different way of looking at things. Instead of trying to find blame, instead of trying to kind of go, why does this happen? Instead I go, okay, how can I move on from this? What other direction can I take? Which is so much healthier, and it's so much
so empowering.
It is.
I'd say, yeah.
Completely empowering. It's, yeah.
But like right now, obviously you've got such high awareness and about everything.
Very much so.
But like obviously before that, when you're like 13, 14, 15, like you had no idea of this stuff. Like when did you start to kind of like figure out and learn about these things?
So I suppose it was, I've always kind of been quite aware. Like I started therapy when I was 13 years old.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Talking to counselors, and I've had various different counselors and therapists over the years. Some who I've had, made great progress with, others who I haven't. But I met one lady, I think a good few years ago. This was when I was still kind of in my undergrad and my master's, and she had me do a lot of sort of self check-ins. So she'd kind of bring me into my body And that sort of started to bring a lot more self-awareness into me and into my mind.
So this is when you're kind of like 21, 22?
I suppose 23-ish, type thing. But it was also my uncle. So my uncle, I might have mentioned it before, he was very, very spiritual. He would meditate every morning. He did a lot of yoga. He went off into the mountains to meditate for 10 days at a time on this experience called a Vipassana. Something I'm not quite ready for yet. Like it's very intense, but I'll work up to it. And I think he was the biggest trigger for healing in me throughout my life. Like when the first meal that I ate without thinking was with him. He's the one that...
Without thinking, when you say without thinking...
So, like, I mean, I know it's very difficult to explain, like, the mindset of an anorexic person, but, like, it was, for me, it wasn't necessarily about the dieting. Like at first it was a little bit, but then it became about control. And I guess because I had no control in my outside life, this was the one thing I could control. But eventually it started to control me to the point where I would count the grains of sugar I would put into my cup of coffee. The grains of sugar. It was excruciating. And like, but I was 13.
Like, what's that like when you're just counting those out? Like,
it's just, I suppose, because you're in such a state of, like, I don't even know how to describe it really, but you're in such a controlled state of mind. You don't even try to think about it too much. And even though, like, the badness of it all, basically, like, even though people around you are telling you, like, this isn't good for you, this isn't good for you, but your mind and your body are saying, this is the only way you can cope. This is the only thing that you can control. So in your head, you're going, well, if I cannot control this, if I don't have complete and utter control over this, then I'm going to fall apart completely. And it just slowly takes over. And I still remember being at home alone, and we had like this little box of sweets, like little jelly beans and sugary sweets and stuff like that. Not that I ever ate them. But I remember taking one out of the tin, and because I started to realize, I was like, okay, I'm very, very skinny, and I could see like my cheeks were hollow, my hip bones were sticking out. Like,
this is when you were 23?
No, this was when I was 13.
Oh, right, okay.
And I remember like looking in the mirror and being very disgusted. I was like, I'm basically a skeleton with skin. And it was like one of these glass shattering moments where I was like, this isn't okay. Because then I tried to kind of bring food back in, like eat a little bit more, because I realized, okay, this is too much. And I couldn't. I physically could not eat. It's very hard to actually describe that. But like, I remember taking this sweet out as like a little test to myself. And I put it on the table in front of me because I couldn't just put it in my mouth. It's like
this Haribo or this jelly.
Just
like
this tiny, 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 tiny little jelly. And I sat in front of it for 3 hours. For 3 hours trying to make myself eat this sweet. And it was like this consistent battle in my head.
So you couldn't even put it into your mouth? Like,
I could not put it into my mouth.
So it's all the same mental thing, like it was...
It's, yeah, because I know that a lot of people that kind of go like, oh, how could you just not eat? How can you let yourself get so skinny and stuff? And it's just, it's your mind completely takes over. And it's this brain pattern that tells you that if you do eat, something really bad will happen. And I could not fight it. I could not eat that jelly.
And you were there for the 3 hours, so what's going through your head there? Like what's going on?
I remember, like, it was so long ago, but I just remember sitting there trying to find the willpower to just put that in my mouth.
But this was after you had this like realization, I need to eat more.
I need to eat more. And so like I kept telling myself, like, I want to eat. I really, really, really want to eat. I want to stop losing weight. This is not healthy. I'm counting the grains of sugar. I mean, like, you can't even count sugar, but I would find a way to like
figure out
how many grains of sugar were going into my cup of coffee in the morning. And that was my treat. A cup of coffee was a treat for me. So I was very, very, very sick. I was very, very sick. And it kind of was slowly dawning on me that this was not okay. And when I could not actually put that sweet in my mouth. And it's not even that in my head I'm going through all the things that could go wrong. It's just trying to make my body move to pick it up and put it in my mouth. It just wouldn't.
The body just wasn't working.
It just wouldn't. And I just sat there for 3 hours. And of course, there was a lot of negativity with that as well, like hating myself, judging myself. And again, you know, worrying about like, okay, well, if I eat this one sweet, what is it going to do to my body? You know, consistently trying to count all of the food, like, okay, well, how can I make up for it? And how can I make up for the sugar? And like in my head, I'm going, okay, maybe if I don't have the sugar in my coffee for the next week, I could eat this sweet now, but nothing would actually allow me to actually eat that sweet.
So after 3 hours, you never ate it?
No, I didn't eat that sweet. But at that point then, the next morning, I went to my parents and I said, I want to go to the doctor. I can't do this. And like at this point, I think they were also at the breaking point and they were like, yeah, okay, no, we want to take you to the doctor. Now, times have really changed and people are a lot more gentle with mental health illnesses and stuff. I was not treated gently. It was actually very, very traumatizing for me back then, because I went to the doctor and of course my GP was very gentle about it. So I'd actually just come back from Holland as well for a couple of weeks. I'd gone over to my OMA, and that's when I looked in the mirror and I saw how skinny I was, and I came back, and I suppose it was a bit of a shock as well to my dad, because in 3 weeks you can still also lose quite a lot of weight, and I was losing it very rapidly, very, very quickly. So of course when the doctor saw me, he was like, right, okay, this is really, really bad. But nobody actually recognized the fact that I was the one that asked for help, that I said that I had that strength in myself to kind of go, okay, I need help here. I can't eat anymore. I want to get better. You know, that's the first step. And I did that all by myself at the age of 13. So that's something that I'm really giving myself a hell of a lot of credit for, you know, and in moments when I think you're not strong, you're weak, I think, no. When I was at my worst, I was still able to ask for help. Yeah. And that's a superpower. But when I went to the GP, he immediately referred me on to a psychiatrist. So they gave me an appointment the very next day because I was just so drastically underweight and very, very sick. And I went to the psychiatrist and was very clinical. I understand that they're clinicians and that they see people like this all the day, but I was a 13-year-old girl. I was scared. I was terrified, and I was very, very sick. And I was basically told, if you do not stop losing weight, we will hospitalize you and you will be force-fed through a drip.
They said this to you at 13?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And so, of course, that put the fear of God in me. You know, because on one hand, I did ask for help, but I still couldn't eat. So the idea of being force-fed was like torture, you know, and I didn't want to have to go into a hospital and be tied to a bed and force-fed through a drip, you know. So this was all very, very terrifying. So it actually only accentuated the struggle in my head, only made things a lot worse. But they prescribed me medication. I was put on Prozac. So I was basically numbed. I became a bit of a zombie, but that kind of allowed my nervous system to relax a little bit. Looking back on that, that's not something I would really recommend to anybody, to be honest. But look, it did kind of help get me out a little bit. I wasn't allowed to go back to school for a while because I went to go and see like a nutritionist, and there were several months of, we had a family therapist. I had my own my own therapist and stuff. I was given these little drinks, these nutritional drinks to try and help me put on weight, something I very much struggled with. I tried to find ways of getting out of having these drinks and things like that. But slowly but surely, I started to get a little bit better and start to actually want to eat little bits here and there and things like that. And eventually I got up to a point where they were like, okay, you're ready to go back to school now. So I started...
So you were out of school for several months?
I was out of school because this was during the summer that this happened. So I was still too skinny and still too mentally unstable, basically, to go into school. So this was in second year. And no, it was actually started going into third year was like when it really, really all hit. So I missed about a month or two of school, and then I went back in and I started doing half days and things like that. And that was very, very scary because, of course, I didn't fit into my school uniform. I was very skinny and stuff. I was very scared of people around me. There was a lot of bullying, things like that. Like even when I started an art project, ironically, I chose Hansel and Gretel as my art project theme. So I was making a big model, a 3D model of the house. And when I went into class one day, someone had spray painted all over it, Erin is anorexic and gay.
What?
Like shit like this, you know, it was just...
Did you ever find out who did it?
No. And unfortunately, the school never did anything about it either.
They just like threw it aside, nothing.
They just gave me a paper bag and told me to breathe into it and then sent me home. So like, this was also back when nobody really took the mental health thing.
So how long ago was this now?
So that was about 15 years ago.
Okay.
13 to 15 years ago. So I mean, it's a while ago. So things have completely progressed, and now there's a lot more help provided, a lot more gentleness and things like that, a lot more understanding, which is really good, because I suppose back then people kind of just thought like, oh sure, you're just vain, you just want to lose weight, whereas I didn't know how to explain to people that no, I want to be healthy, I just don't know how. So yeah, but then of course it kind of tipped the scale then the other way, and I started overeating. And then
really, when you're around 15, 16?
Yeah, that's when the bulimia started, and that actually continued on for about 2 years.
Like every day, like you'd overeat and then you'd...
Yeah, binge eating and purging and stuff. And again, it was just another coping mechanism because I didn't deal with the issue. And the issue was just my insecurities, my stress and stuff. And like, I wasn't in a very wholesome environment.
For you say insecurities and stress, like what were they, or where did they come from?
So just constantly comparing myself to everyone. And I mean, I know that everybody goes through this in school, but I suppose I was just a bit more hypersensitive to it. And at this point, the guilt was starting to kick in about the fact that I was, you know, depressed, anxious. You know, I could see what it did to my parents. I could see how depressed my dad got over it and how much my mom struggled with it, and even the guilt of what it did to my sisters. You know, like they tell me that they were fine with it and everything, but I was just always so conscious about traumatizing them. Like they're my life, you know. I kind of became a bit more of a mom than a sister to them for a lot of my life. So
are they older than you, or
younger? Twin sisters. So like I always wanted to protect them, but I couldn't protect them from seeing me crying, seeing me so upset and things like that.
So you took all of that like responsibility on yourself and guilted yourself, like
completely. So
this was like a constant cycle. So you're obviously sick, but then you had this guilt that you're putting on yourself. So this was like a constant cycle. So, and it was just that's
exhausting.
Exhausting.
Like when you think about it, you're kind of like, when I think back on myself, I used to be so mad at myself for all of those things that I went through, and now I just look back and I just want to go back and just give myself a really big hug and just say like, it's okay. Because like I still had disordered eating because I didn't know how to eat properly, and that's not something that I was, helped with really that well. Like I had all these doctors, but again, it was all very clinical, like I think nowadays there's a lot more somatic processes. There's a lot more things that kind of bring more self-awareness and connection, mind-body connection and things like that. And that's the root of it. Like you lose connection to yourself. So then you don't know what you need. You don't know how to cope and stuff. And there was a lot of things in school that happened, like lots of bullying, certain events and things like that just completely derailed me. So I threw myself into my studies again. That was another coping mechanism to try and make myself feel worthy, because I thought, okay, well, I have a good bit of intelligence. Like I always did very well in school. Let me really, really focus in on that. But again, because I had I didn't know how to cope in life. I was bulimic, and then of course the self-harm started and stuff.
That after when you were bulimic, you self-harm started then or after then?
It was actually kind of, they were at the same time. Well, so it was first bulimia, and then there was a good bit of self-harm and stuff. And that was kind of into 4th year of school. And that was like, I still have the scars from it. And that was something that I never really dealt with it was just I wasn't dealing with any of it, to be honest. And I didn't really bond well with my psychologist either. You know, it was all very messy, and I just kind of kept throwing myself into my school, into studying, trying to be the perfect daughter, trying to be the perfect friend, all while all of this nonsense was going on, and guilt was just kept going. And of course, something that I really only realize now is that, you know, because I had the PCOS, but it wasn't diagnosed, it's something that kind of starts from a very, very young age. Of course, that's going to completely affect everything in your system. It's going to affect your cortisol. It's going to affect your estrogen, your insulin, everything. On top of that, then the eating disorders, my body was not functioning. It was not coping with anything whatsoever. So, of course, I was just all over the place. But then I met one of my first boyfriends, and to be honest, he was one of the best things that ever happened to me. He didn't drink.
What age was this around?
So this was when I was about 16, 17.
Oh, okay.
But he was always very calm, very, very, very patient, just a really, really good, decent guy. And he really kind of brought me to a calm place. And it was like within our relationship that I learned, I stopped being bulimic.
Really?
I stopped self-harming, all of that kind of thing. I did go through a rocky phase at one point where I started dieting again, and I was struggling to eat again, but I managed to kind of pull myself out of that, like with his help and with the help of his family and stuff. But he was just one of the first people to ever be very non-judgmental with me. It was nice. And I suppose when you're in a loving relationship, that allows you to love yourself so much more. You know, he was one of the first people to show me that there are things about myself that are really likable and stuff. So I will always cherish that. Of course, our relationship did become quite toxic after a couple of years. Like, we kept breaking up and getting back together and stuff. But I think that's just because we outgrew each other. What we had was so beautiful, but it should have come to an end when it came to an end.
Yeah, I hear you.
But I will always be so, so grateful for that.
So that was like a big turning point for you. So like,
huge.
Then moving on, so like to like end of school, so like,
yeah, and then going into college. And so like, even in my undergrad and stuff, I had a very sort of, you know, a bit of a rocky relationship with food. I was never particularly healthy with it, but it was a lot better. And also when I was about 17, my mom she almost forced me into the gym because, you know, everyone was working out and exercising, and I really wasn't doing any of that. I have no hand-eye coordination whatsoever. And in school, it was just like hockey and things like that. So I was not good at that at all. But once I got into it.
So it was like 22, 21,
so
22?
When I started in the gym, I was about 17.
Oh, 17, okay.
And it started off with just like going on the treadmill and just starting off runs. Like, I mean, at the very beginning, I could only run for like 2 minutes at a time, and then I'd have to stop and walk a bit. But eventually it got more and more, and I had this like 10 gym pass membership thing. And one of my best friends at the time as well, he would take me in, and we'd just mess around with the boxing gloves and stuff like that. So that kind of gave me a lot of love, like, of course, the endorphins and things like that. I really started to enjoy how that felt, and it made me a lot more confident in my body. And then for the leaving cert, I was actually pretty healthy. So, of course, my main goal was to study and to get as good grades as I possibly could. But I got into this really good routine of getting up early, going for like a short run around, like literally around the garden, but that was perfect.
Yeah.
I'd have my breakfast, I'd study, my lunch, study, dinner, study, in bed by like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. So like it was healthy, but at the same time, that was also still very I was controlling every single thing that I did.
Monk mode is very regimented, like.
Yeah. But once I stepped out of school and into college, you know, I got a lot more independence and things like that. I started to make a lot more friends.
So like even through school, you didn't have much friends, so.
I had a few good friends, but
it's when you started getting into that older stage is when you.
Yeah, I suppose it was like once you're in college, you can kind of choose who to surround yourself with.
More options, I suppose. More, yeah.
And like you get to join clubs and societies and things like that. Again, though, in first year of school, because my relationship at that point was hitting its toxic point. Food, that's when I got really, really skinny again, because like I was using food to control and I was over exercising. So I would be doing like 20 minutes swimming or 20 minutes running, 20 minutes rowing machine, 20 minutes swimming. And while that's something that I could handle now, like that would be fine for me now, that's not something I could handle then with the little food that I was eating. So, but I managed to kind of pull myself out of that. And then basically through my 20s, it's just been every single year has gotten better and better. And I've gained more knowledge and more understanding, more self-acceptance, you know, things like that. But I mean, it's always been quite rocky. I've gone through huge dips. And I suppose, yeah, towards the end of my college career, because I was in college for about 9 years.
9 years. What were you doing in college?
So neuroscience. So I started in biological and chemical sciences. And then
was that something you wanted to do in school or what?
It was, so actually when I went into fourth year, one of my first biology in-class tests I failed.
Okay.
And my biology teacher turned to me and she said, would you like to go down to pass? And the horror that I was like, excuse me, absolutely not. And like, I know that was just in the back of my mind of kind of going, well, that won't make my parents proud. Not that they ever were like, if you do a pass, then you're not good enough or anything. But it was just, again, this whole thing of I need to make myself worthy. Do you know? So the horror of having failed a test, first of all, and then being asked to go down to lowers, I was like, absolutely not. That's not happening. And so I was like, no, I will be fine. I'm going to keep up. And then from then on, I studied biology like absolutely nothing else.
Just to prove to this one teacher that you were like good enough to...
Just more so to prove to myself. Okay. Like she was only just trying to look out for me. And even, you know, like a couple of years ago, I found out that she still uses my notebooks because I would spend hours pouring into these notebooks to try and make these notes perfect. And I suppose then I got a love for biology, and it was either biology or history. I adored history. Like, I kind of wish sometimes I could go back and actually look at my Leaving Cert exam because, like, there was nothing that could come up that I didn't know. I loved it. And that is mostly to do with the teacher that I had. She was just such an idol and such an inspiration for me. And she shared a lot about her life growing up, that it wasn't the easiest and stuff. But she was just, and she still is, just the epitome of a lady. And that's something that my dad would drill into me as well growing up, is to be a lady, you know, don't chew gum, don't put your elbows on the table, you know, things like that. But she was just, and she was she commanded respect when she walked into the room, but she was also very sophisticated and fun. So she was just a huge idol. So I really enjoyed history as well. But I inevitably went with biology, and because I still remember the first time studying the neuron in like sixth year. I just thought it was so fascinating. And I suppose with all the stuff that I'd been through with my brain, like I wanted to understand it so much more. I really wanted to kind of go, okay, well, why does my brain function like this? Why do I have thoughts like this?
Is that what neuroscience is? Is it understanding the brain, is it?
It's the study of the brain and the spinal cord. So it's the whole nervous system. Right. And I just thought it was just so fascinating, and even like the nerves to the eyes and all that kind of thing. So I kind of thought, okay, maybe genetics or neuroscience, something like that. So in order to get to the neuroscience part, I needed to do biological chemical sciences in first year. Okay. Then second year was biological sciences, and then you specify into neuroscience in third and fourth year. And there was only about 18 places in the course. So when I got that, I was like so freaking happy with myself. Like it was it was hard to get. I had to work really, really, really hard, but I'm glad that I did because, yeah, it was exactly what I wanted to do. And like, I loved my classmates. I think it was one of the first times where I was around such like-minded people that, you know, people that were so study and goal orientated, and, you know, that it wasn't just to pass a test. It was like, you know, we want to learn here.
Go above and beyond, yeah.
And it was so intense. It was very, very intense. I mean, hours and hours and hours in the library, but I loved it at the same time. Of course, we still went out. Like, I was still a student. I moved up to the city then for third year. And there were two of the lads in the course, and we came up with the BANS committee.
The BANS committee.
So we would like plan parties, and we were out like every Tuesday and Thursday. So like that was a really, really fun time in my life. And at that point, like, I was eating well, I was working out, I was
studying hard.
Like, I was really happy. But I think at that point as well, I'd moved out, so I had this sense of independence. So I really had to depend on myself. Like, I was doing my own food shopping. I was, you know, doing everything for myself, paying my own bills. So
what was that? Was that difficult for you, or was it something that you actually
that's something that I started to thrive in a lot more, because I had to depend on myself. So it kind of gives you a lot more responsibility. And I suppose, like, stepping away from my family a little bit kind of gave me a different, like, instead of being responsible for everyone else, because that's just the role that I put myself into, is being responsible for everyone in the house. That if someone's upset or not okay, then I'm going, what have I done wrong? What have I done? And I suppose that's just because of the things that I went through. Again, it going back to the guilt and burden. So I just immediately presumed that if someone wasn't okay, it was my fault.
Yeah.
And that it was my job to fix it. So I think it was very healthy for me to kind of step out of that zone for a little while and, yeah, just focus on what I was doing, which was studying, partying, just, you know, nothing like crazy. We just
living a good life, yeah. Just having fun, like, yeah.
The student life, like going to clubs and societies and, you know, having my heart broken a couple of times, you know, things like that. Like, it was...
It's all part of life, isn't it?
Exactly. Like, it was really fun, and I really enjoyed third and fourth year. Nice. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. Of course, there was still a lot of anxiety constantly. I mean, I was riddled with it, but it was still a very happy point of my life. And like, at that point, you know, I wasn't self-harming, I wasn't bulimic, I was actually eating. So like, at this point in my life, I'd kind of created a good, healthy enough relationship with eating. And like,
were you understanding yourself more now? Because neuroscience, it seems to make sense to me now, like, where all this kind of awareness and like this understanding comes from. Probably from studying it, like.
Very much so. Yeah, exactly. Like, I wanted to understand the brain so much more. And while we learned a lot more about it physically, I was contemplating going into psychology, because I kind of thought, with everything I've been through, that I would make a really good therapist, or I could help people. And I also wanted to be on the other end of that table, that if a young child basically ever came to me in the same situation that I was in, that I wouldn't threaten them, that I would be in a position to say, thank you for coming in. You're doing really good, and you're a lot stronger.
You can understand, you've been there.
Yeah, that I will never forget what it was like to be that scared child. But even no matter what age you're at, it's still such a big step to step into that doctor's office and to ask for help. Especially as Irish people, we are not taught to ask for help. It is,
get on with it.
Yeah, you get on with it, and you don't complain, you don't give out, you just get on with it. So, but at the same time, I also had enough self-awareness to realize that I was in no way, shape, or form to help anybody.
Okay.
That I first had to learn to cope with myself, and it was still very much a number one priority for me all throughout my 20s, was just to try and regulate my nervous system, figure out.
So that was a conscious thing. You're always, that was a goal of yours, was to. Very
much so. And even though I knew about how the brain functioned, I knew how diseases developed. I knew how, like
was training, like, is it like understanding the mind as well, or is that more kind of psychology?
That's more psychology.
Okay. So just the brain as a whole, okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that you can study to do with the brain. Like, the more you learn, the more you realize that you will never be able to learn everything about the brain. I mean,
What's like the most fascinating thing you would learn about the brain?
oh, I suppose, is that how elastic it is? That you can completely rewire your brain. So in that, like, even if I look back on how sick I really was rewired from a healthy brain to such a sick brain, but I completely changed the neural pathways in my brain to make myself into the healthy person.
Oh, so you're learning about all those. Yes, okay.
It's habits. It's like these habits, these thought processes that we have. It's all to do with how our brain fires. And like, I'm really glad that I still use a lot of my neuroscience in my day-to-day life. Like, even I understand that if I'm feeling very nervous or anxious, that, you know, I just need to calm my nervous system. So there's a lot of activities that you can do, somatic processes, sort of somatic exercises, or even the way that why mental health walks actually work is that you're listening to your surroundings, the birds, the trees, Mother Nature, things like that. But also you're focusing on your right and left foot, walking each at a time. So you're actually connecting your right to your left, the right side of your brain to the left side of your brain, which which creates a sort of synchronicity between both sides, which helps to kind of regulate yourself a lot more. And you're able to take in your surroundings a lot more while also looking inward. So this is all happening subconsciously. So you're able to kind of take in your surroundings and realize, okay, none of this is a threat to me. This is okay. I'm calm. And while you're walking, you're in that sort of, you get into a steady sort of pace. So it really calms you down. And that's why, people are like, went on my mental health walk today and it actually works. Like, it's these kind of things.
Scientifically, it actually works.
Yeah, it very much works. Yeah. So yeah, while I really enjoyed learning all about that, there was still just a lot missing.
Missing as
like the mindfulness, kind of creating that gap between like knowing how the brain works and how to actually get it to think.
Oh yes. So it's like you knew. Yeah. So it's like between knowing and like implementing this.
Exactly. Because the goal of this neuroscience course was to get you into research or get you into...
Yeah, so like, what was your goal when you went into this course? What was the aim?
I didn't know. I just knew that I really, really liked studying. I really wanted to study the brain, but I didn't know where it was going to take me. And to be honest, I knew I had 4 years ahead of me or 2 years ahead of me once I specialized in neuroscience. And I kind of figured, right, well, when I know more, then I can choose my path. And I was like, okay, well, I could kind of go into psychology. I could become a neurosurgeon. I could become a neurologist. I could go into research. And to be honest, research was kind of my number one thing. I'm a puzzle person. I like figuring out how things work.
Yeah.
And I like I suppose it's again to do with the anxiety that it makes me feel a lot calmer when things fit into place.
Oh yes, I hear you. Makes sense.
So even like, I love doing puzzles. When I'm stressed, I love doing puzzles because it's quite a meditative thing, but it also, you're constantly putting pieces together.
It's also forcing you to kind of step back and to kind of evaluate what's going on,
exactly.
isn't it?
Yeah. So
you have to be really present, isn't it? And when you're doing it, you're like...
Yeah.
Or like, even like, oh, I've seen that piece where they go, that looks familiar and all this.
Yeah, problem solving.
Yes.
So I kind of thought, okay, I love answering questions. Like, questions to me do not scare me. I love... not
challenge of it, like,
I love
bring it on.
knowing something because it means then I have something to learn, and I just love learning. I'm a total freaking nerd in that sense. So, and then of course, on my dad's side of the family, there's a lot of neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and things like that. So my dad was always kind of saying like, yeah, I'm going to develop Alzheimer's. I'm going to develop these kind of things. So I kind of thought, okay, well, why don't in my naive mind, I thought, okay, I'm going to save him. I'm going to find a cure or something like that. So I found one of the departments in UCC, the neuroscience and anatomy department. Within that, there was a group that studied a lot of neurodegenerative diseases. So I basically hounded one of the supervisors like every single week in my final year, like, are there any research projects going? Anything happening? Anything going? Any funding? So anything happening, like every single week. And then one day she replied with, like, she always replied, But one day she replied with, yeah, we've actually just got a grant and there's a master's position available. So if you want to start that in September, more than welcome to. So that was really, really exciting. But again, like my mental health started to decline then again. Like once I finished the course, I suppose it's just, you know, when you build up for so long and like I had such a strict routine of studying and everything like that. And then to be out of it, I kind of lost myself a little bit. So my anxiety really, really kicked in. And I suppose there had been a lot throughout the years that I just hadn't dealt with. A lot of trauma.
So college and all this and part, it was almost like a distraction for you away from what was actually like inside. It's you know, when you were at, well, I suppose you came back from college, finished college.
So I finished my undergrad and then I went into the master's. But now I really understanding that, like, you know, again, like what I was saying, that if you don't deal with something, then your body is going to put you in the position to, like, your anxiety will increase. That's just all tension that you're not releasing. It's all traumas that you're not processing. It's all emotions that you're just not letting yourself express, you know? You know, the hardest thing to do is to sit still, because things will come up for you then. Like your body is going to make you deal with things in its own time if you're not going to make time for it, you know? So I suppose when things kind of relax a little bit.
So that's what you need to do is like calm down like this.
It's like if you're in a state of chronic stress, I know a lot of people, and even to like regulate hormones and things like that, people tend to say like, oh, get into a routine of exercise, like push yourself, work hard. That will get you on the right path. Like, no. That's actually only going to drive you more insane. That's only going to make it worse for you because you're constantly activating your nervous system. And that's not going to help chronic states of stress. Your nervous system is already in hyperdrive. If you really, really want to come back to yourself, if you really want to learn calmness, then it's just about being able to sit still. It's about slowing down. It's about breathing. Like one of the hardest poses in yoga is actually the Shavasana, where you just lie there.
Just lying like...
You lie there. It's none of the twists. It's none of the backward bends or anything like that.
Why is it so hard?
Because people can't sit still. They can't be alone with their thoughts. Because that's when things start to bubble up. Like these insecurities will come up and stuff like that. But unless you actually listen to them, comfort them and soothe them, and then release them, it's just going to keep bubbling up. But we're in such a habit of just kind of going, that doesn't matter. And you completely,
drive on,
you ignore it and you go, that doesn't matter, but you're ignoring yourself. It's like if your friend comes to you and they let out an insecurity, you're not going to turn to them and go, shh, stop. I don't want to hear it. That's silly. That's a stupid emotion to have. No, you're going to hug them and you're going to say, that it's okay. You're fine. You're actually doing so much better than you think. You're going to give them encouragement. But we never do that to ourselves. We never do that to ourselves. And if we just maybe start treating ourselves like we would a friend, an upset friend, then maybe we would actually start to accept our emotions and our
easier said than done, though, isn't it?
A lot easier said than done. But this is one thing that one of my amazing therapists taught me was, so what she had me do was a bit like the walking. She had these two kind of buzzers and it would buzz right to left, left. And she'd have me like focus and kind of look from one to the other.
So when it buzzes, you have to squeeze it, is it?
No, sorry. It vibrated. So you would have it in your hand. So it would kind of like create this like synchronicity from the right to the left side. And that just soothes your nervous system. So then that would allow me to bring up traumas and things that would have happened in my childhood and in school and things like that that otherwise would send me into a spiral, because instead I would just start thinking about that time. I'd put myself back into that mindset and I would completely panic. And I mean, I've suffered from panic attacks since I was about 13. So it would just, my whole body would start to convulse and panic basically. So this kind of allowed me to also like not relive the memory, but bring the memory up, but also realizing that I'm in a safe space. Because you're synchronizing the left and right side of your brain, the logic plus the creative side, so it allows you to kind of bring up past issues without losing the plot. So I'd bring up that emotion, and then she would say, okay, what age do you feel? And so then I would see whatever age that I was at this trauma, or sometimes even it would be a little bit earlier, because sometimes things can be traumatizing, not because of what's actually happening in the moment, but because it's just been too many times of this sort of feeling popping up. So your trauma might not actually be related to what happened in that moment, but something that has been building for years and years. So she would ask me, what age do you feel? And then she would have me visualize myself at that age, sitting in a chair, kind of in between us. So like if we were sitting like this, the chair would be there. And she would have me talk to myself, or this girl. So then I was also, again, able to separate myself from myself. So I would try and stay in my age as I am now. So this was kind of like when I was 25, 26. So I'd say I'm Erin McCarthy, I'm 25, I'm 26 years old, and I'm looking at this traumatized version of myself, but it's a little bit separate. So I was able to be a lot kinder with her, me, and almost visualize comforting myself. So then rather than looking externally for these comforts and things like that, I was comforting myself. And I was able to then kind of gain a lot more independence in that sort of way, and able to be a lot more caring towards myself. So I started to deal with a lot more of these issues and things like that. So yeah, again, even more self-awareness and stuff like that. And I suppose then in those kind of years, that's actually when I started to become a little bit spiritual as well. Like my uncle, like I was saying earlier, very spiritual. He started getting me into the yoga. He started getting me into breathwork practices, things like that. There was a lot though that I felt like I wasn't able to do. Like there's one thing that I do now, that I do on a daily basis before bed, and it's like a check-in into every tiny part of your body. So you just lie down flat, and you can start with your right hand. You go through all your fingers, all the way up your right.
Like, are you just sitting there, like trying to imagine it, or are you just like actually touching it?
No. Like you just imagine, you bring your awareness into that part of the body. So it's basically like a little check-in, and you think, okay, how does it feel?
Well,
think of the
body scan, is it?
A body scan, yeah. And you go through your entire body. And I do that every night before sleep. And that's something that my uncle tried to get me to do for years, but I was too anxious to do that. I would never be able to focus. So whereas, it's definitely something that I do a lot. But yeah, he was also one of the people that inspired me to actually go to Bali and do this, spiritual yoga course and stuff like that. But unfortunately, he actually passed away in February. So about a month before I left, or a month and a bit before I went on this course. So this course couldn't have come at a better time, because it was, the grief of that was just, I felt pain before. I felt heartache. I mean, yeah, from some of the stories, there's a lot of agony, a lot of heartache in all of that. But this was it just blew everything out of the water. My heart goes out to anybody that's ever lost someone. It was just the most painful thing I've ever experienced, like losing someone just so important to you.
And it was so pivotal for you as well.
Huge. Like, he was just the main person in my life that triggered healing, so throughout my life. And even he was my number one fan. He adored me, and I never, ever, ever doubted his love for me. He was that one person.
Wasn't there one that he was outside training with you?
Yeah.
Did you make a video?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember that.
He was fit. Oh my God, the amount of hearts he broke. Like, yeah, so many women were in love with him. But he lived every single day of his life. And he was so calm, and he was one of those kind of people that I never had to apologize for being anxious around. Anytime that I would try and say, like, I'm really sorry, I'm not myself today, or I'm really sorry that, I'm really anxious, he would say, so what? That's how you feel. You're anxious? That's okay. I'm not. That's okay. But we're still spending time together. And, that it just always allowed me to kind of...
I'd say hearing that over and over was probably that helps you kind of reprogram that
completely
way of thinking, yeah.
Exactly. And yeah, he was such a messer and such a good person. He was always on the path of self-healing and self-awareness and constantly just trying to make himself better. And he really kind of taught me how to try and not react to people's reactions, that people are going to have their own reactions, but that has nothing to do with you. That, you know...
Such a great way to be, isn't it?
It's such a great way to be. So he's the one that got me into the meditation and things like that. So, but yeah, losing him was just the worst thing that could have ever happened, really. But at the same time, because of how fast it happened, like he was 63 and he died in a skiing accident. So what we reckon happened was that he must have had like a brain aneurysm or something like that, because he was fit as a fiddle. I mean, I trained him.
There's no way he was on a...
There was like, he was so fit. He did yoga every day. He meditated every day. He was just he had such a healthy lifestyle. So it's a bit mind-boggling as to how this happened, but he went skiing with some friends, two of his best buddies over in Austria, and they went up in the lift, and he started skiing, and the lads heard him go, "Yeehaw!" And 30 seconds later, they heard a thud. So he skied into one of the ski lift poles and broke his neck and immediately died. So it was like that. But what a way to go, do you know? Like, I just know that I'm not mad about it. I'm not going like, why did this happen? Instead, I've actually had a really healthy reaction to it.
Yeah, I even notice now, like the way even you're talking about it is really helped you. Like,
I wouldn't have...
You're really looking at the positive side of things and how...
Yeah, like he wouldn't have wanted to die in a hospital or in a home, or I don't think aging for him was ever a thing that he wanted to have happened, you know? So, and he died doing what he absolutely loved. You know, he was a ski instructor for years in Austria. Yeah. So, but that's why we also think he must have had an aneurysm or something like that.
Because he was almost a pro at it, like, so...
He was.
Yeah.
You know, it's mind-boggling how someone can just ski into a pole and die. Like, you know... But the amount of crying women at his funeral was very funny. So like he kind of, his death was a real kind of spark for me as well to kind of go, okay, stop putting things off for tomorrow. You really, really need to start living every single day. And even a lot of his lessons, I started to kind of go back over it, like the things he taught me about meditation, about...
Things he said you wouldn't have taken on board, yeah.
That I really started to go, okay, start listening to it more. The worst thing about it though is that like he's the one that I would have sent all my progress videos to. Like if I got a new personal best in the gym, I would have taken a video and I would have sent it to him. If I did anything really cool, he got a photo, he got a video. I mean, he was like my look at what I'm doing and how great I am kind of diary, you know?
Yes.
He was my number one fan in every way, and I never doubted how proud he was. And even when we went over to Holland, the amount of people that already knew me, they already knew my accomplishments. They knew...
Oh, because he was living over there, is it?
Yeah, he's Dutch. My mum is Dutch as well.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So it's very hard. Like, it still hits me quite a lot sometimes when I do have these little new achievements and stuff. And even, like, I that's the thing that I miss the most, is that I don't get to share those things with him. Like, I know he sees it, whether he's in heaven or whatever happens in our afterlife, you know, I know he's very, very proud of me, but it's kind of spurred me on even more because he would have wanted this so badly for me. He would have wanted me to get this emotional stability, and, you know, he would have been so, so happy to share this.
See the progress you made, yeah.
Yeah, and even the yoga journey and stuff.
He would have loved to hear all about that belly flip saw.
He would have absolutely loved it. And even moments where I felt like this is too much for me, this is too much, I kept going like, no, it's okay. Just think of Sean. Think of how proud he was. Think of how much strength he gave you, and that will push you through. So, yeah, while his death was the worst thing that could have ever happened, it was also I'm trying to take the lessons from that. And I do that now. What
are some of those lessons?
So, yeah, just to stop taking what everyone else thinks on board. You know, that's something he always saw in me as well, that he always kind of said, you know, Stop worrying about how anxious you are. Like, it's okay. Just feel what you need to feel. That some people are going to like you, other people aren't. I still hear his voice when I meditate and things like that, like in all the little lessons that he would have given me on how to meditate and stuff. So they really replay in my head a lot. They bring me a lot of calmness. He also got me back into dating, which like he was loved by so many women, like not because he was a little bit of a slut, but because
Playboy.
he was always searching for his soul partner. He wanted to find his soulmate, and he never, ever, ever gave up on that. But whenever he met up with a woman on a date, they would immediately fall in love with him because he wasn't just there for the physical aspect. He was there to understand that person, yes. You know. He would ask the important questions. He would dig deep into their life, into their feelings, into what made them who they are. So, of course, that meant that, you know, every woman was ready to marry him after one. And, you know, he was always kind of asking me, like, you know, why don't you go on dates? Like, why don't you go do this? And I've always been very, very reserved. Like, I've had 2 very intense relationships, that first one and then one I had a couple of years ago. And I guess for a while, I kind of, again, it led back into the guilt thing of like, I don't want to bring this on anybody else. Mm-hmm. And it would have made me very insecure, very defensive in my relationships and things like that, and like with people that I date. And I suppose I would have held, you know, the things that didn't end up in relationships, I would have held that quite close to my heart a lot and kind of go, well, what is it about me that they didn't like? And he would have always just said, well, there's millions of other people. You just got to find someone that does like the way that you are. And those people that don't like you, they're not for you. You know,
I love that.
Yeah, just
a nice little term I have is like rejection is protection from everything that doesn't serve you.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
such a good one.
That's exactly how we should think. That if someone rejects you, or if things don't work out, then that's okay. Because
so even the same for like other situations in life, you know.
Yeah.
If you get rejected from a job, okay, perfect. I was protecting you from that job. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That clearly wasn't meant for me. So you go and find something that was. And I think we put a lot of fixations on, you know, will that boss want to hire me? Will that company think I'm a good person? Will this man, woman, whatever, will they want to date me? And that if we don't get these dates, if we don't get those jobs, then we put it on ourselves and go, well, what's wrong with me? And instead of kind of going, okay, well, that clearly wasn't made for me, do you know?
Or even something I've noticed, well, he's kind of helped you flip it. Is like, you said, will this boss like me? It's like, will I like this boss? Will I like these
exactly.
people? Will I, you know?
Yeah.
You kind of change.
So, yeah, even
change the way you look at it. It's like, now, will that person like me? Would I actually, do I like them?
Yeah, would I like myself with them?
Yeah.
You know, that sort of thing. So, you know, and that's another thing that he would have said, you know, you have to like who you are as a person when you're with these people. So, so I got myself back out dating, and like I've had a few things here and there. Like, obviously nothing that's turned into anything serious, but for the first time in my life, that doesn't bother me. I'm like, okay, well, it'll happen when it happens, you know, that anything that hasn't worked out is clearly just not meant for me, and that's okay. But that's a very different mindset to what I would have had before. And it's tough to get to that point, but I think that comes with just accepting yourself.
Is that, you think that's like the foundation, like the main thing is accepting yourself?
Yeah.
And then all of this kind of comes from that.
Yeah, and even just this thing, I know so many people say accept your flaws, but I think even I suppose that's the first step. But like, stop seeing them as flaws. But just because you're not good at something, just because you can't do something or whatever it is, that's not a flaw. There are a lot of other things that you can do and stuff. You can't do everything. You can't be everything. We have certain limitations. So instead of thinking of flaws, I like to just think of like, okay, well, it's just a limitation. Like, this is as far as I can be stretched to, do you know? So like, instead of going, okay, well, I'm a very hyperactive person, instead of looking at that as a flaw, I'm like, okay, well, I just need to find someone who's got a hell of a lot of patience. But that's not a flaw. That's just part of who I am, you know? Like, I think that a lot of people, you know, especially neuroscientists and these self-help people and stuff like that, they try to get you to accept these things that you don't like about yourself. But the fact is that there shouldn't be anything you don't like about yourself. Like, you can have bad habits and things like that. But again, any bad habit that you have is just a coping mechanism. So you need to reevaluate your life and go, okay, well, what makes me feel the need to have this coping mechanism? And it's not a flaw on you. It's just something that's not quite right in your life. Things like that. The spots on your skin, that's not a flaw. That just means, okay, well, maybe my hormones are out of whack. Maybe I'm too stressed. Maybe my diet isn't right. Maybe I need to wash my pillow a little bit more often, whatever it is. But it's not a flaw. It's just something that might not be quite right for you, that sort of thing. So that's very much helped. But yeah, I think the foundation to actually getting to where I am right now has just been loving myself for everything that I am. And one practice actually that I used to do, that I started to do as a teenager, that really, really helped was every morning I would get up and I would look in the mirror and I would go, right, no matter how much you hate yourself today, name 5 things that you like. And like at first they were things like, okay, my thumb is kind of all right. I got
a decent thumb, yeah.
My wrists are kind of cute. Like, I like how my collarbones, they're quite pronounced. Like, I think that's quite a feminine thing on me. I'd be like, okay, I like the shape of my neck, or, I have a nice belly button. Really weird things at first. Like, you just find the teeny tiny things. Even for a good while, it was how soft my earlobes were. And then eventually it progressed to being like, oh, well, I actually quite like my nose. I quite like the color of my eyes. I like the shape of my lips, and it's not that you look at everything as a whole. Instead, you look at like the finite little things, and it starts slowly but surely. You start to actually look at the things that you like about yourself. You start to look for things that accentuate those parts of you, instead of actually going, well, I have lumpy hips, or, oh, my lips are too thin, or, oh, I've got a big belly. Things like that.
It's because like positive and negative thoughts can't be in your mind at the same time.
No.
So if you, as you say, focus on the small little things, your mind already goes into a positive train of thought, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So
we've covered a lot of what's went on.
Yeah, exactly.
So we want to call it.
So like the good things that have really, really brought me a lot of peace.
So what are those good things that have brought you a lot of peace?
So one of the big things was realizing how much the research and stuff was not suiting me. So like I went from my master's into my PhD, and like I completely burnt out from that. Like it destroyed me and my soul. It was just not the right kind of job for me.
You say burnt out and like destroyed your soul, like what, like just...
So to the point of like when I finally finished, I had such a mental breakdown that like if I stubbed my toe, I would have a tantrum like a toddler would. That like my nervous system had to be completely reset.
Right, you were almost ready to blow up, like
exactly. To the point where I didn't want to live anymore. Not that I was ever going to do anything, but it was...
You're just so fed up and done with
I didn't want to wake up in the morning. I didn't want to get up. I didn't want to live anymore. And I couldn't see the point in it in any way, shape or form. All I wanted was to die.
After you did your PhD and everything, finished college?
Even like a couple of months after I'd finished. Okay. So it just took me so long to start to kind of realize that I wasn't in a sort of stressful state anymore. Yeah, so I just lost all enjoyment in life to the point where I didn't want to live anymore, and that was really, really scary. Like I suppose I've been in suicidal sort of mindsets before throughout my life, like obviously with the overwhelm, the burnout through various different things, but this was like it was just all very, very intense. And like I told my mom how I was feeling and stuff. She was very good to me. She was very, very gentle. And like I went to doctors and stuff again just to see if I could, got on the medication and things. Like none of that worked. So I really, like none of that was working with my gut, with my metabolism, with my mental health. Like it only ever made me worse. So that's kind of really when I went, right, okay, enough with medication, enough with doctors. I need to start adjusting my lifestyle and properly focusing on myself, prioritizing all of the little things that I can do.
How did you come to that decision that you needed to, a realization you needed to, that it was lifestyle that needed to change?
because nothing else was working. And I kind of figured like, okay, well, I can't actually fix this chemically. Like it's only going to make me so much worse. So what could be stressing me out? Well, it was just nothing else was working. And it was just either try another form of medication or find another therapist or, you know, none of these things were working. And I just kind of said, you know, I'm really done with how all of these chemicals are making me feel. I'm done with feeling numb inside, but also still wanting to die. And just, I said, right, okay, enough is enough. And even like I was speaking to my uncle quite a bit, and he again was really driving home the fact that, you know, it's all inside of you. You just need to find the calmness inside of you and readjust. And I suppose my time away from the lab really made me realize how toxic that was for me and my nervous system, that I'm so glad that I did it, that I feel like I contributed to science in a way that satisfied that part of me. And, you know, I'm lucky enough now, or I'm happy and I'm proud of that, the fact that I can call myself a doctor. So I did all of that, but yeah, I just realized that I need to change up my career. I need to completely reassess, because like even when every time I open up my laptop, I would have a panic attack. So I was like, right, okay, I can't get an office job. And I didn't want to go back to bar work. I didn't want to go back into like working in a cafe, couldn't function in a call center. So I went to, right, what's the next best thing that I love doing? And that's exercise. So I said, okay, well, why don't I learn a little bit more about this? Like, it'll give me something to focus on, and I love to learn, so that will really help. So again, I followed my passion, and I really enjoyed the course. And I kind of thought to myself, well, look, if I don't become a trainer afterwards, at least I'll know what to do for myself. And I was just all on the how to make my life as healthy as possible. So even then I did a test to see like what am I intolerant to and stuff like that, because again my hormones were really, really acting up. Like every day I would look like I was about 6 months pregnant because I was bloating so much. I couldn't lose weight around my tummy. I was having immense afternoon slumps where I just needed to go to bed, or I'd even get so exhausted that I'd nearly faint. I was up to like 3 panic attacks a day, and nothing I could do. Nothing.
This was all when you're on the medication?
This was when I was on medication, but also before and a little bit after as well. So it took a lot of time for me to go, okay, do you know what? These things are probably all completely correlated. My mental health is probably correlated with the fact that my hormones are dysregulated, which is affecting how my body is functioning. So I said, okay, do you know what? Enough of doctors for now. Just go with what you know, go with like research, things that can help you regulate your hormones. So the first thing that I found was diet. Diet really, really affects how your hormones function. So I said, okay, I did an intolerance test. Like you can send your hair off for like 25 quid. And it showed me all the foods and stuff that I'm intolerant to. I cut out.
Just from your hair, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
No blood samples or anything like that?
You can also do those if you want a bit more of an in-depth one. But I just did because I wasn't working. So I just got the 25.
Yeah.
And like I tried, so I sent my hair off, and I cut out processed food. I cut out gluten and cut out dairy, because those two things really interact with dysregulated hormones. And I started doing a lot more meditation and a lot more breathing. So I started to do things that slowed me down. Rather than these intense workouts, these intense runs, I would try and do meditations. I got into strength training a lot more than like, you know, cardio and HIIT and stuff like that. So I was still working out, but I was adjusting it. And I suppose all the knowledge that I was gaining from my personal trainer's course, that really fed into all of that and everything as well. And I slowly started to kind of find joy and started to laugh again. And I think that's kind of really what spurred me on even more. And then I got the job down at the sauna. So I work at My Haven Sauna in Oyster Haven, which
it's an awesome sauna, yeah.
It's phenomenal. But Paul, my boss, he has done wonders for me. He's really opened my eyes hugely to so many holistic practices. Like he'd be into his meditation, his yoga and things like that. So it was kind of like having shown here again, you know, I was getting all of this wonderful advice, both from family and from work now as well. And the people that I surround myself with, I'm literally working on a beach in the fresh air, interacting with people that are coming for a gentle, soothing, relaxing sauna.
So they're already on that kind of frequency or that energy already.
Exactly. So putting myself into that very sort of calming environment. And I know that not everybody can do that with their own jobs, but I just started to realize that even being by the beach, like trying to carve out these moments of just, slowing myself down, being around like-minded people, that was having such a huge effect on my mental health. And my metabolism started to regulate. My sleep started to get a whole lot better. And I started doing regular saunas. But with the sauna, you're going into the ocean a lot more as well. And that has an insane effect on your body. The resilience that you build up, because you're constantly shocking your nervous system. So I think your nervous system becomes far more resilient in your day-to-day life stressors and things like that. And I start to notice that my appetite isn't as great, my sleep isn't as great, my stress levels increase when I don't do the saunas and sea swims. It's mostly the sea swims, but the sauna is also a really nice added bonus. So that really got me on the whole wellness track a lot more. And just surrounding, I really started to look at my life and kind of think, okay, well, who in my life actually stresses me out? And like, I started to pay attention to what my energy was like around certain people. And
like when you're with them or like after?
When I'm with them and afterwards. Yeah. And I started to realize those who energize me and those who exhaust me. And very gently, it wasn't like arguments here or there or anything like that, but I just slowly started to push away from those that sucked my energy. And that had a huge effect, like tremendously. And again, I would like with my family, I would really try to take a step back and go, okay, well, try not to let everything that they do affect you so much. Like it's not your responsibility to look after them. Same with my friends and things like that. So there's just a lot of these like little daily practices that, like the diet, making sure I prioritize my sleep, saying no a lot more, like when I need to, taking responsibility for myself, but only for myself, being outside in nature all the time, cutting out all of these things that really stress me out. Like, so altering my job, I know not everybody can do that, but I'm seeing such a trend in a lot of people, especially like scientists and nurses and, these people that go into such stressful jobs that they just want to quit and own a coffee van because we burn out so fast. And all these people, they keep pushing and pushing and pushing themselves. And even like with my clients now, I have a good few that when they come to me, I say, okay, we're actually not going to go straight into the intense workouts. And they're like, but I need it. I'm like, no, what you need to do is learn to sit still. So I practice a bit of yoga with them, or we do breath work or like guided meditations and things like that. We look at their diet, we look at their daily routines, their sleep patterns. And then slowly, once they kind of have a few of these sort of coping mechanisms set in place, then we introduce the intense workouts. And you can actually see so many more gains, so much more of an effect on the body when you're actually in tune with it. Like the gains that I've been working out since I was 16, 17. I've never seen such a transformation in my body as I have the last 2 years.
Yeah, seriously.
And that's not just because I'm lifting heavier or whatever. It's actually
lifting more than some men lift.
Yeah. You wouldn't think it, but it's actually because I regulated my nervous system first. And then that allows me to actually be a lot more energized for my workouts. I mean, I'm not pushing through. I don't work out half as much as I used to. I weight train 3, maybe 4 times a week. I'm doing my spin classes and stuff now, but it's mostly yoga, which helps me to regulate my nervous system. And that's how I lost the weight around my tummy as well. And then if my diet and things like that, they help with the bloating. And of course, that doesn't mean that I don't still get stressed. Doesn't mean I don't still get upset. And,
like what happens when you do get those feelings out? Because I understand that you've like a much different way of approaching it now. Like, so let's say all those things come up again. Like how do you approach it?
So this time, instead, so the first thing I do is I kind of go, okay, well, what is this triggering in me? And it's either anger or it's upset. Like a lot of times anger is just sadness. So instead I try to go, okay, well, what exactly am I feeling? And then where am I feeling it? And then why am I feeling that? And I try to just be very, very accepting of whatever is coming up. Like you can't help how you feel. And how you feel is generally a result from things that have happened in your past. So if I get really upset about a particular argument or something that I've had with someone, instead I think, okay, well, why does this bother me so much? You know, and instead of looking at like, well, why can't I just react better? Instead I just go, okay, well, what part of me needs a bit of nourishing right now? What part is it triggering? Like, do I need to let something out or do I need to be kind to myself? And it's a completely different way of thinking. And even realizing that like, okay, well, sometimes you just get upset because you're tired. That we tend to push ourselves so much that we end up getting very irritable and tired and irritable and angry because we're just not letting ourselves rest enough. So it's, you know, kind of trying to figure out, well, okay, is that actually because of something that I'm really upset about, or do I just need to take a day off, or do I need to take an hour to myself, have a bubble bath, go for a walk, sit and listen to the waves of the ocean, you know, that sort of thing, go for a sauna. And instead of looking to like a glass of wine or even a joint or, you know, whatever it is that
They've been things you would have done before?
They would have been things that I would have needed in order to... Yeah, that I would have needed to like calm my mind and actually relax myself, because I wouldn't be able to just... I'd be at war with myself and giving out to myself for why I'm angry, why I'm reacting. Instead, because I've got this acceptance, it's like, okay, well, right now I'm angry, but that's an emotion. That's a human that's a human emotion. Mm. So just feel it. Just be angry. Just feel it and let it pass. Like, you know, if you need to punch something, get a punching bag and just punch it. But don't be mad at yourself for being angry about something. Don't be pissed off with yourself for being tired. You know, like...
Just try and understand why it's happening. So.
Yeah, and just accept it. The sooner you accept it, the more it will pass. You know, and sometimes you can't figure out as to why it's happening. You just are. Like the other day, I was just really annoyed with the world. I was just like, I'm frustrated. I'm really, really frustrated. So I started doing like a bit of shaking, and I have a punching bag. So I just started punching that and stuff. And like a couple of minutes in, I realized that it was just because I was really tired and I'd overdone it with myself. Like I had, you know, scheduled too much within my week, and I just needed to have a good meal and some downtime. So, and whatever that is, like sometimes that's a bit of Netflix. Other times it's just sitting and meditating in the garden. Other times it's doing art, you know, whatever it is for you. You just need to find that little bit of you time, which is very hard to do, but I find putting music on or headphones kind of allows me to like go into my own little space as well. But yeah, just learning to just accept whatever emotion or feeling is coming up for you is one of the best things that you can do. Looking after your diet, making sure that you get enough sleep, but just being gentle. That's like the biggest thing, is just be gentle with yourself and with everything around you, and just realize that not everything is about you.
That's so true, yeah.
You know, that people are going to be pissed off. They're going to be annoyed. They're going to not like you. They're going to get triggered by you. But that's not your job to fix that, you know. Someone might snap at you in line, but that'll have nothing to do with you. They've never met you. And instead of being judgmental of that person, instead I just go, oh, well, I hope they feel a bit better later on. And instead of letting that affect me, and just go, okay, well, that person has some work to do, or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah, just be centered, be not judgmental.
Just try and let things just flow. Try and let things flow off of you. Yeah. One of my favorite things that my uncle used to say was just go with the flow. And when he died, I found this diary of his, and he had this handwritten passage in it that just explains that we spend so much time actually going against the flow that we think that that's going with the flow, that
yes, I get you.
Working in these jobs that we don't like, you know, doing things like, oh, I have to go here today, I have to do that, I have to eat this, I have to work out, That's not going with the flow. That's actually
It's like creating your own flow. That's not the actual
that's
flow.
going against it. That's building a dam and creating another line that you think is best instead of just going with it. The fact that you didn't get that job, go with it. Do you know? If that relationship didn't work out, go with it. Your lawnmower's not working, so you can't mow the lawn today. Just go with it, you know, instead of trying to constantly veer off in other directions. But we think that is going with the flow. So
interesting when you said that.
Yeah, and like when I read that, I was.
'Cause I've always heard like go with the flow. Is like it's a common enough thing people might say, like, but
yeah,
when you actually to understand it, to go with the flow, like
it's just allow things to happen as they're happening, and try not to question it too much. Just try and just go with it. And that's like something that plays in my head every single day, especially when things don't go as planned. I'm like, okay, just go with it. It's fine. Like on my flight over to Bali, I left on the first flight as well. I left my headphones in the case with every single charger I had.
For like phone, everything, like
everything. And I was just sitting there going, instead of getting angry and annoyed, I was just kind of like, okay, well, maybe it's a sign that I need to be off technology for the next few days. Maybe I don't need to be spacing out on my headphones. Maybe I don't need to be tracking my steps with my Fitbit, you know, things like that. And I was like, okay, just go with it. This will be a nice little break, you know?
Joe, you said there as well, like, this might be a sign. Is that something you like?
Yeah.
Think of a lot of things, that this is a sign from the universe. Or how would you look at, what's your point of view on that?
Well, I think we're all made up of energy. The world is made of energy. Nature is energy. And even like there's been experiments done to show that if you just lie on the ground, that there is an exchange of energy from the ground into you.
That's grounding, isn't it? Like
grounding, exactly. And yeah, I just think that like I talk to the moon, and you know I hug trees and stuff like that, which a lot of people think is just silly hippy dippy stuff.
So, but why do you do that?
Because I feel like I release a lot, and like for me, I suppose talking to the moon is kind of like some people talking to God.
Yeah, that's what I would have looked at. Yeah.
You know, so for me, it's just a nice bit of release, and I really understand people who really do believe in God, that like go and they pray, because it's nice to kind of just put the responsibility into something else, into someone else. And you know, so for me, I very much
putting that trust and faith. And
yeah. And when you put your trust in God or in the universe or whatever it is, then it's a lot easier to go with the flow. It's a lot easier to kind of notice the things that are meant for you. And I really do believe that we all have purpose in life. We all have a path that we're supposed to follow, that you can change that however way you want to. Every single micro decision that you make changes that. But I believe that we meet people on purpose. I believe that the relationships
this is happening on purpose. This was meant to happen.
Yeah. Someone's going to hear this and they're going to really relate to my story. And
they were meant to hear this for a reason. Like, yeah.
Exactly. That, you know, even the fact that like I had Bali booked before my uncle died, and that was something that I really needed in order to process the grief. Like, I believe that was meant to happen. The women that I met on the
even all the bad things that happened, like they were all meant to happen too.
Exactly. The bad things that happened in my relationships, in my life, the traumas that I've had, they were all to try and teach me something.
To bring you here where you are right now.
Exactly. Like, I don't think that I would be as happy with myself. I don't think I would love myself or be as healthy if I hadn't gotten to such bad places. That sometimes some people don't really need to get to those bad places in order to have that switch to kind of going, okay, I deserve better for myself and from others. But I needed to sink that low. I needed to really have to work very, very hard in order to feel that gratitude, in order to feel at peace with myself. And, you know, I suppose that's another reason why I don't really question the bad things anymore. Instead, I kind of go, okay, well, what is the universe trying to teach me here? You know, when things don't work out in a certain way, I kind of go, okay, well, what knowledge did I gain from that? What experience did I learn? Even my uncle dying, I kind of think to myself, okay, well, what has that taught me? You know, like I might have lost one of my best friends, one of my most cherished, like he was one of my most favorite people in the entire wide world. But I've now gained a guardian angel. And like I've got all of this motivation now to do things that I never did before. So it's not really looking for silver linings. It's more looking for the lesson.
Big time, yeah.
And trying to just constantly move towards being better for yourself. Not being like a better person, but being better for yourself. Treating yourself better. But yeah, I believe in nature, in the universe, and I just think we're all one. We're all just various different forms. So even that helps me to kind of not judge people as well, because I'm like, well, you and I are the same, but we're different. You know, you don't know what a person has gone through, but they're people, they're human, they've got emotions just like you. So you really cannot judge them. You don't know what upbringing they've had. You don't know what they've had to experience in life. You don't know where they are at in certain levels of their life, do you know? Yeah. So, and I believe in reincarnation and everything, and that, you know, we learn something in every different life, that when you die, your energy is recycled, whether you come back as a tree or a human or whatever it is. But I believe in this recycling of energy. And that's why I think the grounding really, really works, that when you need to release negative energy, you can also take in energy. So like listening to the wind, listening to the sounds of the ocean, like that's why these vibrational sound healing things work and everything like that. And
but where'd you learn about all this?
Mostly from my uncle, but also just, I suppose the course has taught me a hell of a lot as well. That was very, very spiritually orientated. Like we learned so much about the theory of yoga, like where it comes from, about Hindu and Buddhist and stuff. Paul has taught me quite a lot as well, my boss. And like the people that come to the sauna, you know, they like, we sit and we talk a lot. There's so much conversation. Like when I'm down there, I'm not on my phone a lot. I'm reading books or I'm talking to people about these sort of things, and just looking inwards as well. I've learned so much more. And I've done a lot of my own self-exploration as well. So when I say I'm spiritual, I don't think I could really put a label on that. I think everybody's very, very different. Like whether that means that you go to mass or whether you meditate or whatever it is, but it all comes down to the same thing, you know, that you are just accepting everything as is, and you're letting go of the idea that you need to control everything and just go with the flow.
Go with the flow. Be like water. Is it Jackie Chan?
Be like water, yeah.
Be like water, my friend.
And remember that life is yin and yang. You cannot have the good without the bad. So again, like I was saying, I couldn't be in this position. I couldn't be as happy in myself as I am now if I didn't have all those bad experiences. But that for every bad experience, there's a good one. And then when you start to kind of when you start to think like that, the bad experiences aren't so bad anymore. Yeah. They're just the lessons.
Big time, yeah. Like how I look at it is like, for me, like if God wants to build you into a superhero, he's got to put you through so much suffering and pain in order for you to be that superhero. Like,
look at poor Spider-Man. Yeah. He lost everybody. Everybody. Yeah, I'm a big Marvel nerd. So.
What's your purpose right now?
Wellness for myself and for others. So I want to get people moving and exercising. I suppose my main focus is mobility. I think we're so rigid in our movements these days that like I just want to get people strong in their bodies. And when they're strong in their body, they're also strong in their mind. So it's kind of like a circular way of doing it. But now that I've got my yoga certificate, I'm going to be doing a lot more yoga with people and things like that. So I want to train. I've just started a job in Apple as a personal trainer as well.
Nice, well done.
I'll be doing classes and things like that there. But I'm going to still keep on growing and adding. So I'm going to go to India in November and do another yoga course. I think I'll specify in some way. And then in February, I'm going to go to South Africa and do a breathworks course. So I just want to try and help people find wellness in themselves, either through movement or sitting still, or both, like a little collaboration. And I do have a few clients that I'm helping just to holistically regulate their hormones and things like that, because of all of the experiences that I've had to go through and the lack of help or knowledge that I had with the doctors. In holistic methods, you know, I've really done a lot of research there, and at least then I'm putting my doctorate to use as well.
Yeah. That's so cool. Everything seems to have come to a full circle.
Full circle. Exactly. So like, I can't keep kind of looking back at my time in college and going, God, that was so bad. And that really didn't serve me, because I'm using it every single day, you know, and even like when people don't want to get into the water at the sauna, I'm able to explain what neural pathways are activated and, you know, how the dopamine release and stuff like that. So I throw it in big words and they're like, oh, right, okay, that sounds really good, you know. So I'm getting them into the water. So it's nice to have everything come full circle. But I do have a lot of people that kind of turn to me and they go, oh, you're always so happy, you know, you're so lucky that you've got so much energy. And
how would you react to that?
Of course, I thank them and I appreciate that. But at the same time, I do want to bring home to people that, you know, it's not all sunshine and roses.
You weren't always like this.
No, that I've been to the darkest of dark, that I've been through all of this stuff. And it's not to gain pity or anything, but it's also to show yin and yang. That, you know...
I think the law is like cause and effect, isn't it? Exactly.
That I'm happy and I'm so good in my life because I've seen the bad. I've done the work, and that I've sat with my emotions. I've sat with my traumas. I've sat with my pain, and I've accepted it. And I've still got so much work to do. Like, it's not like, okay, I'm done, I'm healed. Like, no, you never...
It's always an ongoing process though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a journey you're on, isn't it?
Exactly. And you'll still be healing when you're 99 years old, you know? So it's just about continuously doing these things.
So you can get like too into it, or like too obsessed with it.
100%. And there's a lot of people that go down this path and become very driven by their ego, because they're like, oh, I'm so much better than everyone else because I'm spiritual and I meditate and I do all this kind of stuff. And it's like, you need to stay grounded.
That's not the point of doing all this. Like, no.
It's to find acceptance within yourself, but it doesn't make you any better than anybody else.
No matter what you're doing, like, it doesn't make you any better than anybody else in life.
Ever. No matter what you do, you are not better than anybody else. You might be better than the last version of yourself.
That's the aim of life, isn't it?
Exactly.
That's the meaning of life.
Yeah, but so I think you as long as you can stay grounded throughout that and not let this get to your head, then that's really good. So that's what I really like to do, is just to be very mindful and just remind myself, like, okay, this is where you came from, this is where you're still at, and just remember that you're never done progressing. You don't know everything. That, I'm a doctor of neuroscience, but I know about this much about the brain, like this much. People ask me questions all the time. I'm like, I have no idea, because I didn't research that part. People ask me about certain exercise. I'm like, actually, I've never looked into that, you know? So I feel like the more you know, the more you realize the less you know.
Wow.
I think as long as you can remember that, you can kind of stay grounded.
It's also such a great way to be, as well as, like, you go into it, what is it, in that mindset, you don't know everything, like, because then you're open to learning. Yeah. But that's even, like, I come in here now, like it might seem like an interview, but this is me wanting to learn. Like, I'm curious. Exactly. I want to figure this out. Like, why are you, like what went down? What can I learn from this? You know, it's being curious, like. Exactly.
And I think, you know, it's really nice for me to share this as well, because again, like I was saying, so many people look at me and go, oh, you're so happy, and, you know, you've got so much going for you and stuff like that. And I say, yeah, but that's because I've earned it. That's because I did the hard work that people are very uncomfortable to do.
Yeah, and it is uncomfortable, isn't it?
Very. To sit with yourself. That's why I said the hardest pose in yoga is to lie down and sit still. You know, it's the toughest one. But
I think there was some experiment done, is like, people were given a choice to either sit in the room with their thoughts for 10 minutes or touch an electrical cable. And like, majority of people was like, I just want to touch the electrical cable. Yeah. Instead of sit with their thoughts for 10 minutes.
Yeah. But when you start to, it goes back to what I was saying about, you know, when my therapist had me like envision that traumatized version of myself, instead of looking at all of those insecurities and those negative thoughts as negative thoughts, instead you start to feel a lot more compassion, and they're not as scary. It's not as intense, because you're going, well, actually, I just need to soothe that part of myself. And that goes back to the thoughts that come racing into your mind. One thing actually that people need to do more, that I do all the time, because my mind goes 900 miles an hour, is gibberish meditation. And this is something I've learned over in Bali. We did it once and I just found it so incredible. But basically you just sit somewhere nice and comfortably, close your eyes, and you can set your timer to 1 minute, then 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever.
Oh, so you want to slowly progress it over time?
Yeah, exactly. And you just close your eyes and you just speak gibberish, like blah, 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 blah. Let your hands start moving, whatever it is, because...
So you don't use words, you actually say those?
Just say stuff. Like, it doesn't have to be a word, it's nothing, it's... Because that's all the thoughts are in your head. It's just a load of nonsense and gibberish. Like, half the time it's stuff we don't need to be thinking about. It's stuff we don't need to be worrying about. It's situations that you're creating in your head. It's arguments you're having in your head.
We suffer more in imagination than we do in reality.
Exactly.
When I heard that first, I was like
the shower arguments. I used to have so many arguments in the shower, like envisioning these like arguments with people. And, you know, I think a lot of people have
so
that
like
as well.
Yeah, so like you're going to see someone, you're like envisioning an argument with them.
Yeah, so then by the time you actually meet them, you're already on edge because you're imagining what they would have said to you or reacted to you. So it just changes the whole...
You're just manifesting that into real life. So
exactly.
Like, but you need to turn that the opposite. Like, you know, when I do it all the time when I'm like doing podcasts. Like for now, we had planned this like 3, 4, 5 or 6 days ago.
Yeah.
Like ever since then, I've been like kind of it going through my head, so kind of like almost imagining or visualizing parts of like our conversation, and like just doing that like throughout the day might pop up like, oh, that's a good kind of thing to chat about, or you know, and I'd say a lot of these things that we've spoken about, I probably ran through them in my head a little bit already, like.
But it's probably turned out completely different to what you thought, or maybe it hasn't.
Maybe, yeah, probably a lot of it. Like,
but that's a little bit more of a positive one. But yeah, when you think about like the arguments that you might, if you have an issue with someone and you need to talk to them about it, it's best to try and not think about it before you actually get to it, because otherwise you're going to just imagine how they're going to react to it, and you've had an argument before it's even begun. You know, that sort of thing. So yeah, but that's just one of the things that can go racing through your mind. So by just speaking gibberish, you're kind of letting these thoughts like flow out of you. So the more you do it, so you start off with 1 minute, and like, of course, there's lots of laughter and stuff.
It must feel so weird. I'm going to try it later and see how it goes.
Please do. Like, you're better off doing it by yourself. I've actually tried it in 1 or 2 of my classes, and people are they get very self-conscious. So I think it's something that you can do maybe one-on-one with someone. But yeah, try it for a minute, then take a few deep breaths, like open up your eyes, that sort of thing. Then try it again for 2 minutes. But I just find it's especially good like at the beginning of the day or the end of the day when my mind is racing. And like, we have such a triggering life that of course your mind is going to go 90 a lot of the time. So it just helps to just clear it out and let out the nonsense in your head.
And so a lot of it is nonsense, isn't it?
A lot of it is also
nonsense we put there ourselves, like.
Yeah. So that's, another little thing that I do. So it's all these little daily practices, but yeah, I'm not going to say I'm an expert in any way, shape or form. Like, the more I learn, the more I'm a novice. So yeah, I'm really excited about where I've gotten to, and I just can't.
You should be so proud of yourself, like.
I am. I'm really, really proud of myself. And
how does it feel even saying that now, like?
So damn good.
Yeah.
Because I know that
you can see it in your face, like, it's just like, I'm sorry.
Yes. But it's nice to say that and believe it. Like, even when I submit it.
Believe it, isn't it? That's the most important thing. We can always say these things. You can set so many affirmations for yourself, say it over and over, but until you actually believe it.
Yeah.
It's like anything. If you want to do something, until you actually believe that you can do it,
it's just not going to happen.
Like
that, you know, I am worthy. I am lovable.
You can say those things 1,000 times, but until it actually, you're like, yeah, believe it.
Yeah. Well, it's nice. Yeah, I don't have these. I try not to put anything negative out there as well. You know, like, of course, complaining, you need to vent, but like, I try never to give out about myself, like say, oh, I'm bad at this, I'm bad at that, I'm not doing good enough, I'm a bad friend, etc. Like, instead, it's like, I've got some things to work on, you know.
Or I'm not good yet.
I'm not good yet.
Yes, yeah. That was your word you said, yeah.
Yeah, just add that yet to anything that you feel like you can't do. I can't.
It gives you that
yet.
That belief or that hope that you can, like.
Yeah.
And you absolutely can.
Exactly. You can do whatever the hell you want to. You just need to actually put your mind to it, and not be like, I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm this and that. No, because whatever you say is what your brain, you're telling your brain things, which is going to tell your body things, which is
one of my favorite ever things. For like, I'm not sure if you know Conor McGregor, but he says like, if you can see it here and you've courage enough to speak it, it will happen. Like, and it's true. Like, it's all comes from there. Like,
exactly. So like, even before I went to Bali, I kept telling myself, okay, this is going to be a transformative experience. This is going to be good for me. This is going to be good for me. And oh my God, did that blow me out of the water.
I was even saying to you a while ago, this was off camera, like, you know, that every day I at some stage, either when I wake up or in the morning, something awesome is going to happen today. And you like truly say it awesome. And then like loads of awesome things happen. As I said to you a while ago, so many things happen. You're like, wait, what was the awesome thing that was meant to happen? Like, you know, it's just, I've noticed that it's only the last 2 weeks, maybe last week, that I've actually started doing it consistently, like every day. And things just start happening.
When you have that positive mindset, but you also attract.
But say it with conviction, like something awesome. I literally, this is the way I do it. Something awesome is going to happen today. And like, it's going to be awesome.
It's going to be freaking class.
I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to happen. And sometimes you think about things that you kind of want to happen, and if you kind of, I don't know, if connected with that, it's weird. It's weird how it works, but it works.
Where
like
manifesting comes from. And just, I'm not saying like sit down and write things down 55 times in a row to manifest it, but if you just believe in yourself, then you can achieve so freaking much. Unbelievable. I
think I'm going to leave it there. Believe in yourself.
Believe in yourself.
Be proud of yourself.
The biggest thing.
Be gentle with yourself. They're the key points.
Be proud and just allow yourself to love yourself.
Erin, that was awesome. Well done.
Thank you.
That was brilliant.
That was
you should be so proud of yourself.
You too, man.
I am.
Good.